Okay, so I'll make a start. First of all, I believe the basis for action is clear, and don't need to go through that again. For me personally, especially at the side level, looking at inefficiency in operations and the need to do business right was reason enough. One concern, is this a fact? I don't believe it is. However, some of the symptoms of fat management can be applied to carbon management at the moment. There is a current media obsession. Question will it last? Well, it certainly won't to the same intensity that we're seeing currently. You may have noticed there's a lot of climate change conferences at the moment. That's something new. All I really want to raise here is that similar issues have come upon us in the past. There have been responses. Total quality management, many of you remember that as a concept. Business process re-engineering, that as a concept, to deal with business inefficiencies. I believe that one of the speakers earlier today inferred a JIT approach, just in time. All of these are things that are coming up in carbon management approaches. Carbon is not the only decision-making factor. That's what I believe is important. It must be dealt with as an integrated approach to more general environmental and perhaps sustainability issues. So the business response needs to be both reasoned and measured and not driven by headlines. A little bit more broadly before I go into some site specifics. Can the business community rely on government to establish effective drivers? Can we basically say, oh, our strategy will just be dictated by what the government tells us is important? Well, one thing that at least the government is starting to show some progress in the right direction, so we can see the Energy White Paper. But we have to think about coverage of things like that, how it applies to us. Transport, energy producers, large energy users might be better addressed by that type of government policy. But what I did want to look at is some existing regulatory tools that the government can use, does use. And this is looking at site specific. I've got here a pollution prevention and control permit under the PPC directive, that is Europe-wide. Just wanted to read out a section. Conditions, energy efficiency. The operator shall A. Take appropriate measures to ensure that energy is used efficiently in the activities. B. Review and record at least every 4 years whether there are suitable opportunities to improve the energy efficiency of the activities. And C. Take any further appropriate measures identified by a review. There are hugely comprehensive Environment Agency documents that back up and give guidance as to how operators can go about doing that. But this is a very recent permit, and I just wanted to give you the text of a standard improvement item that the Environment Agency is including in pretty much all new permits. A written report shall be submitted to the Environment Agency. This report should include a detailed best available techniques review of the energy efficiency of process equipment and related plants. The report shall contain proposals to operate the site using equipment that has the lowest environmental impact. But that is a real environmental improvement item in a real permit. And it shows that if applied correctly, the government and the Environment Agency does have the teeth to look at individual sites and look at their energy efficiency in really quite a prescriptive way. So, other than the energy white paper, I just wanted to bring in some site specifics. So, how do organisations respond? I believe we've been here before. In terms of EMS, and looking at a business response, thinking about generations of changes from Silent Spring through Bhopal, through to recognition of the ozone hole. In the early 90s, there was development of environmental management systems, BS 7750, a British standard. I was involved in the piloting of that in 1992. It became a British standard. It later developed, and we had EMAS, we had ISO DIS 14001, ISO 14001, latest version 2004. These were all a reasoned and measured response to environmental issues. The business community got together with the standards bodies, piloted approaches, and we ended up with these standards that I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. What I'd like to make a case for is that these are valid tools that we can use for carbon management. Also, a point here, reducing carbon emissions may involve tough choices. I think that there's been some good examples earlier on today about where carbon reduction has actually been absolutely common sense and virtually a no-brainer in terms of implementing improvements. Your local site environmental manager is used to dealing with tough justifications for environmental projects, tougher than this in general. We've got a case where carbon can be, in many cases, directly equated to a dollar sign. What about the case where the local environmental manager is arguing for, say, low NOx burners to be fitted to his boiler house? Unless you've got a regulator, a strong environment agency inspector, as an example, actually insisting on that type of thing in a regulatory environment, then that environmental improvement is extremely difficult to justify, and more difficult than a CO2 reduction measure that can be more readily equated to financial issues. So, at site level, what I'm saying is that you've got environmental managers who are highly experienced with justifying and getting environmental improvements through. So, I do think that we've been here before in terms of coming to a solution for how we manage this type of issue. Many organisations already have an environmental management system in place. I'm just going to flip to the next slide. If you've got ISO 14001, this will be extremely familiar to you. It's an ISO 14001 Management System Improvement Loop. What I've jotted in there, and I've taken no time over this, just jotted some ideas as to how carbon management can be integrated into your existing management arrangements here. There's a requirement for environmental policy. Well, there we can include a commitment to carbon emissions reduction, for instance. Planning, I think this is a key area. There is a process for evaluating what's called environmental aspects, assessing them, defining significant environmental aspects, and using those as the choice process for selecting objectives and targets for the entire firm. And this is looking across the board. So it's not just selecting energy, it's not just selecting wastewater or the amount of waste. It is already there, integrated, ready for you. That section is all about understanding legal requirements, and it's about setting objectives and targets. This is a classic, by the way, Deming's Plan, Do, Check